that's...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Vonn Patricia.
Okay, there's nobody behind me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Top of the morning to you. We're all Irish at least one day. Now that we know St. Vincent, we're closer to God. Right. How I met St. Vincent and how it came to be that she's here and I'm here again. I feel I'm back home. It's been maybe 80 years since since we came here. I came here as an infant in my mother's arms. My father was that Catholic in Hartford because my mother was a swamp Yankee from Niantic. And he came down in the summer, like a lot of guys do, around the beach and all. Anyway, my mother worked at Pete Mitchell's and that, but he was that Catholic from Hartford. So she was a Baptist, but her father was an odd fellow. When I was in my troubled teens, my father exiled me from my grandmother's house, my grandfather's house. And the first night I was there, I went down the hall to say goodnight to my grandfather, and he was reading a big orange book. And I said, "Pops, is that a Bible?" He said, "It's my Bible." I said, "I never saw an orange Bible." He said, "Well, come down earlier tomorrow night and I'll show it to you." I went down, and what do you think it was?
The story of her.
Ripley's Believe It or Not. He was an odd fellow. He took care of the furnace, and he was a janitor, whatever. He was a turkey farmer. He was a scalper, a clamor, you name it. He was a corn and beautiful corn. Anyway, so each night I would go down, and he would read me another fantastic, or might say miraculous type of thing. And it was mostly about what we called in those days fakers from India. One guy sat on a pillow and looked at the sun every day until he went blind. Another one held his arm up in the air until a bird made a nest in it. Another one was buried alive, etc., etc. Those are the ones I remember. But that was his Bible. So my mother was on one side, and my father was that Catholic from Hartford. So my father brought us to St. Joseph's. Now, I'm just going to say a little bit of background so you know how I came to be able to have the blessing from Father Mark to carve St. Vincent. Because actually I have a lot in common with St. Vincent. I mean, I know vulnerability because I was born deformed. When my brother was born, you don't know me, but I know you all know Neil, my brother Neil, right?
Yes.
So my brother had the personality of my grandfather, Ripley's Believe It or Not, he had a personality. But anyway, if I wander, just kind of go like, I'm not used to this. I've been working by myself with my wife for like 50 years. And I sometimes talk, but usually in groups, smaller groups, So anyway, what was I saying?
You came to St. Joseph's.
Yes. So my father would seat us in the pew. Okay. My father's mother was Kathleen O'Brien from Tipperary. Her father was Malachi O'Brien in Tipperary. Her mother was Mary Welsh, I think it was, or something like that. So anyway, he always sat us in the pew with St. Patrick. Yeah. And I was like an infant. And as I said, I was born deformed. I had my big toes almost touched my heels when I was born. My brother had one foot like that, and my mother cried for a month or something. When I was born, I came out with two of them, so you can imagine. So anyway, my mother wanted girls, so she, put ribbons in our hair and all that, like for about a year or something like that. But we turned out all right. I mean, at least, we fit in today anyway. But what I was going to say was that, so we sat in that pew, and I had casts on from my feet up to my knees, so I couldn't walk or anything. So, and the Mass was in Latin. Those were the days when women wore veils, high heels, and nylon stockings, and the men wore fedoras, not in church, but And so I came to Christ through beauty. The divine beauty of St. Joseph's. And St. Joseph, my patron name is St. Joseph. So, but in Puerto Rico they say, we have enough Jose's. So my father's father was German, coming from like Prussia. And his name was Anton Wilhelm Vonn Hartung. So when I became I decided to become an artist and not a carpenter like my father. I decided that I would take my grandfather was the black sheep of the family. He was an artist, and he left home, and about a year later, my grandmother died of a broken heart. And my father was left with his sisters, and he was brought up by some of his aunts who were nuns that maybe, dropped out of the nunnery or something to take care of him, I don't know. But anyway, I decided that I would become an artist, but I would basically work for carpenters' wages. And that's the kind of story of our success in Puerto Rico. Because I went there, I was always, I wasn't paying attention too much in school. And I was getting sent down to the office for drawing in study hall. I was supposed to be diagramming sentences, which I thought they were trying to brainwash us or something. But anyway, so when we went to Puerto Rico, the other thing, so as I was saying, my grandfather, Wilhelm Anton, my father said he was a bum. And therefore, my father had more ability in art than I did. But my father said, all artists are bums, because he wanted me to be a carpenter. I said, thank you, but I want to be an artist. That was it. That's when he exiled me to my grandfather's house. But anyway, so because when I wanted to become an artist, my grandfather was an artist, I figured he couldn't have been that bad. I know that what he did was bad, but for some kind of redemption, I took the name Vonn when I became a professional painter, because it just sounded better than Joey.
Do you know she sometimes cries?
Is that Joey?
Do you know that she sometimes cries?
Say what?
She sometimes cries.
She does.
Yes. I've seen it.
I've seen...
I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one.
I believe it. Before she was shipped, after I finished it, we were worried because we found out they were going to take her to New Jersey on a barge with a seagoing tug. So, I mean, I don't know how I felt, but I was like really, I had a little mental problem, let's put it that way. But I was thinking that we had to have her blessed for the journey, for the trip. So we took her, the wonderful priest, Father Bravo, said we could bring it to the San Ignacio Church, and after Mass, we showed it. And after people came up, and they were all crying, people came up to me, like I was a psychiatrist or something, and they were saying the people and their families who were suffering from some kind of mental disturbance. and they were crying and all. And actually, some of them hugged me and everything. So I kind of understand the aura that she gives off, and it's divine. What can I say? I don't know.
It's real. It's real.
Real. To
It's
me,
real.
life is mystical. And when we get to me talking about carving, after my dear wife gives you a kind of a rundown, because she's my scribe, and she would keep records of how it went. So I want to let her talk now. Patty? Her name is Patricia. In Puerto Rico, Patricia. But we call her Patty. That's kind of Irish sounding, isn't it?
I have to read my notes, I'm sorry. It's good to be with her again. Spent many, many hours with her while she was being born. So this is just a brief recounting of what I know. Father Mark put up photographs. We would send him photographs as Vonn was carving, so you could see the process. This I'm going to tell you more about the process of what went into putting the big 500-pound block of wood together before he could even start carving, and it was quite a process. Okay, after receiving the commission, first of all, in January 2020, the COVID pandemic hit. And also Vonn had to have cataract surgery in both eyes, and we were still rebuilding from Hurricane Maria. And so we had to put this on a back burner for a while to accomplish all these other things. So he wasn't able to begin the process of selecting the wood and constructing the block that would become the statue of St. Dymphna until the following January 2021, so a whole year. And Father Mark was so gracious, and he said, "You can't rush the artist." Yeah. Which we appreciated that, because it was just tough times, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, here we go, the beginning. On January 30th, 2021, we met up with Gabriel Betancourt, our friend and master woodworker, at his lumberyard to select the 190 board feet for St. Dymphna. We would be going to Gabriel's shop many, many times until the monolithic block was complete and ready to transport to Vonn's studio. This is an hour away each time. Gabriel lives practically in the rainforest in Puerto Rico. So these very treacherous roads to get there, and so that's where they were working on her. So like 4 days later, Gabriel and Vonn worked together to first figure out precisely how to cut the boards. Then Gabriel cut them on the large table saw there, and they loaded them into his truck. 4 days later, we went to Gabriel's shop where they worked many hours planing and joining the wood. The 13 16-foot-long boards were cut into 39 boards. They had to pass each of the 39 boards through the planer. And I recorded that they passed each board 5 times on both sides through the planer.
On each side, yeah.
On each side, dressing the wood. So that was a big procedure. And later, on thin plywood, Vonn sketched the 4 profiles of St. Dymphna. The front of her, her 2 sides, and her back. And to size.
And thin plywood.
Yeah, to the exact size. 5.
Because the block was square or rectangular-ish.
Right. And so this was to fine-tune the wood block at Gabriel's shop. which was going to be assembled at his shop. So a week later, Gabriel and Vonn are getting started with the joiner. All the wood is numbered and separated into 3 stacks by the different natural color differences between the wood, because some of them are lighter than others, and we wanted to use the lighter ones for the front. Okay. So then Gabriel gave Vonn a sample of 2 pieces of the wood glued together so he could carve on it and see how it carved where it was glued together, if it carved well. About a week later, they laid out the 5 sections of the dressed lumber, and they glued and clamped them together with like 22 heavy-duty C-clamps. This monolithic Spanish cedar, it's called Cedro odorata, which is actually a species of mahogany, similar to mahogany. It measured, this piece measured 12 inches thick by 24 inches wide by 5 feet high, and that's going to be the front of the statue, from the ear to the front of the foot, let's see, to the front foot. Her front foot is forward here, because she's in motion. The same process was repeated for the back of the statue. And then the 2 were glued together and clamped together with the same pressure from the floor to the ceiling with pressure with scissors jacks, like when you jack up a car.
We put 3/4-inch plywood on the top, and it was on the bottom, and so that was pressurizing it quite a bit all over, and we pressed it together. Not too hard, but Gabriel was an amazing woodworker. His father owned a lumberyard, and all the kids worked in the lumberyard. They were all Catholic, and they went to all the popes, wherever it was in the world, to Brazil, to Germany, to Canada. They were a Catholic family, and he made most of his furniture for the church. But he knew what he was doing. He was constantly reading. They had imported lumber from along the road.
This lumber came from Costa Rica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this phase of gluing and putting the clamps on involved Vonn, Gabriel, and 4 of Gabriel's family members, including his wife. He has 8 children.
Including you.
With me photographing the process. Okay, so the finished monolithic block weighed 500 pounds. So Gabriel and his family delivered the monolithic block the day after St. Patrick's Day. It was going to come on St. Patrick's Day, but there was a huge tropical storm and flooding, and the roads were treacherous, so we came the next day. They delivered it, and it was quite something to lower it down the bank, because his studio is down a steep bank. So they had to lower a 500-pound block of wood into his studio and onto a movable, a rotating base. They call it a lazy Susan when you get one for your house, but it was a big one. And placed the block on there. And Vonn began carving the next day immediately. He's never wasted any time. Got going immediately. So he continued to carve it and finally illuminate the statue. Finished the end of July. Actually, it was...
That was in March, St. Patrick's Day.
He finished the carving at the end of July, like July 30th, and the next day was the Feast of San Ignacio, St. Ignatius, which was our patron saint in the Jesuit church, and that's when we brought her to the church so that our pastor, Padre Flavio, could bless her for the journey over the ocean, being pulled by a tugboat on a barge during hurricane season. So she left Puerto Rico on August 19th. She skirted 2 hurricanes, Henri and Ida, and 2 or 3 tornadoes in New Jersey. And she finally arrived. She was shipped to New Jersey. She was put in a warehouse and then put on a truck, sent to Hartford, and then from there sent to New London on the feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows, September 15th. So it took from August 19th to September 15th for her to...
And she was uncrated behind the church. I was there, people were there, and we were so excited to get her. And then they brought her in.
And you had flowers for her.
And she,
Do you remember the first truck that was supposed to deliver her?
yes, yeah, his father called me and I came running down and he said, it's the wrong truck.
They opened the back door and it was empty. And we heard this, oh my God. And about a half hour later or something, the other truck came and she was in.
And she was very, very well packed.
Well, Padre Flavio allowed us to build the crate for her at the church. So Gabriel and his family, we built the crate. It took quite a while to do that, and they did a beautiful job. And then we had to call the shipping company to take her, and she sat in a warehouse for longer than we wanted her to, but they had to wait until they had enough things that they were going to ship on board. And we're going, we were scared.
I have a quick question. How long it take you from all the process? How many years? Since you started like trying to see what tree you want and everything, how many years?
Oh no, well the wood was from Costa Rica and it was in the lumber yard of Gabriel. His father owned this lumber yard near the rainforest, and they had this beautiful tropical cedar there, and it was boards, long boards.
Wow.
So we had a picture of him with a whole pile of lumber, 16 feet
Hold
long.
your arms up.
It was
On
like,
either side, there was this many boards on both sides,
Right.
16 feet high.
Wow.
So we cut it in 3, like each one, 5 feet, 5 feet, and then what was left over.
Wow.
She's 5 feet tall.
I know.
Some of it went.
My height, that's what caught my attention. Yeah, that's my height.
And when you were sending the pictures, I eventually got them all, I printed them and made a couple of storyboards that were in the back of church. I don't know where they ended up. But I thought that a lot of people in the parish would be interested in the process
Absolutely.
of how you did it. Because you look at this statue and you think it's just like a marble statue.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all put together with boards.
right, it's unbelievable, because do you see any of the seams?
No.
When I first received the commission, I was thinking of a tree trunk.
Okay.
But in Puerto Rico, which is a pretty small island really, and over the years, and you know, what we do to trees, or what they do to trees, there weren't a lot of tree trunks available. And I spoke with Gabriel, and he said, you know, when you start to do a tree trunk, you're not sure what you're going to run into. But this Cedro Oderata, he gave me his price. Like he bought it was his lumber yard, and that was good because it would have cost a lot more money. So yeah, and it was air dried in Costa Rica. I think the finish part of it was somewhat kiln dried, but most of it they leave it for quite a while. But he was telling me, I don't know a lot about this, I'm not a woodworker. As I said, my father was a carpenter. I helped him build houses, boats, and in Puerto Rico, I with help from our church and Patty, I built the house in Puerto Rico. And it's all wood, of course. But so I know how to do that, you know. But woodworking like Gabriel, I didn't understand.
Now, you've also done some statues or something
Yes.
over in the Vatican?
Okay, so, well, first of all, during Hurricane Maria, I was carving St. Joseph, statue of St. Joseph, which was 3/4 high, for a little church, Espiritu Santo, way up in the middle of the island. I got that commission through a Mexican architect who saw my work. So that was Hurricane Maria.
Carving Joseph during Hurricane Maria.
I felt very close to him too because of St. Joseph Church. And also the community of St. Brandon the Navigator, because here comes the ocean in air. We're right in the middle of the ocean.
We don't have a statue of St. Brendan, do we?
Oh, I thought I saw
Sit down.
Yeah, we need
I don't
one.
know.
We need one, right?
That'd be the next.
But, you know, when I went to, okay, she is turning. And this was a turning point in my life also. Because when my brother died, my dear brother Neil, I came up for the funeral.
Yeah.
And I was in the reception line. And all of a sudden, there's Christ standing in front of me in the disguise of a Catholic priest, and it was Father Mark. And he took my hand.
He didn't hear that, so it's
Took my hand. I looked, I didn't see any wounds in it, but he said, your brother, you know, he just speaks, you know, about your art and everything. And I had given them my brother gave them a picture of the Madre Dolorosa.
It's in the back.
That's in the,
Yeah.
But anyway, he said, we would like you to, members of my congregation, would like to have you carve a statue of St. Dymphna. And I said, Saint who? And he laughed. He said, Google it. So anyway, I did. From that moment on, I was kind of hooked. I mean, her life, look, she was only a Christian 1 year, maybe less. Her mother was converted. Her father was a pagan king. And he had mental problems. Most kings do, not all of them. And those who would be kings, okay? The dictators or whatever. So it's so much. It's hard for me to go in and out of the, you know, essence, the context of it.
Well, one thing that's interesting, when he came back from his brother's funeral, which was in December 2019, so right before COVID, all right, he was so sick for 2 weeks, he couldn't get out of bed. He had a terrible bronchial.
Neil died of a bronchial, ultimately, infection, and him and I have a very weak bronchial system. Maybe I picked it up on the plane, I don't know. But I was flat out in bed for 2 weeks, so mostly I was thinking of St. Dymphna, because reading her, studying her, and thinking of it, and thinking, we all have a daemon in ourselves. You know, it's Damon, her father. It sounds like demon, right? A demon. Well, we all have one. You know, it could be small, it could be big. It could be dangerous or just really annoying, but it really puts other people off, etc., etc. And now it seems like our country is full of demons, you know. So we have to, something we have to face and overcome in a way. And she, did this because of her faith. She was slight, 5 feet high maybe, but I put blouse sleeves on her to give a symbol of power. So, and her defender and her faith is symbolized in this gospel, which is the first book in Western history. Before that, they were, what they called?
They were parchment, papyrus.
I mean, they had a top and a bottom, but they weren't bound.
They weren't bound. This was the first bound.
Yeah, this book is actually small, and it's there in Ireland. But it wasn't a scroll, and it wasn't a whatever they call it, I forget what it called. But this, so anyway, book is from about the same century. And I talked to Father Mark, and we decided to put the book doesn't have the jewels, but we put some jewels in it to signify the four evangelists and the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This is her shield, and that was to her pagan father, a mentally ill king that obviously, you know, went too far and beheaded her. What I read was that where she fell, imagine the blood and all, the people from the street that were living in the street went there that night and slept there. And they say in the morning they were fine. You know, they had mental problems.
She died in Geel, Belgium, where she had escaped from Ireland to Geel. And I mean, I learned about Saint Dymphna many, many, many years ago in school, and knew that she was a patron saint of mental illness.
Right.
And when you hear her story, you really understand. You're right, he was a demon, he was everything. And the anxiety that she must have had in her life growing up, not even before she became a Christian. I'm sure it was the great love he had for his wife, that when she died, he didn't know what to do. And his advisors eventually suggested that he marry his daughter, which she, of course, knew he couldn't do.
Incest. So, you know, the name Dymphna, I looked it up, the etymology of the word is small poet. When I was carving her, I gotta admit, I really don't, I can remember almost everything I did when I was doing it, and also illuminating her. But to be honest with you, it's kind of like I was with her, that's all. I was with her, and she was with me. And we became kind of bonded. And it was kind of mystical, the way it happened. I don't know. I mean, you know, but after having the experience with her, I was talking, my daughter wrote to me. My daughter will be 61 in December. And she wrote me a letter and she said, I never thought I would be old. I just thought it was up the track somewhere. She lives in Australia.
61 is not old.
We understand that, right? And, you know, she's not religious because her mother is not religious. So she doesn't really even respond to my Catholic sacred art very much. But she loves it because I did it. But anyway, so because of St. Dymphna, I started writing poetry again. I used to write poetry when I was maybe after a teenager, but when I was a kid, I always thought poetry was for sissies. But as I got older, I started to write some poetry. But since I carved Dymphna, she was an inflection point in my life. She was a turning point in my life. And that was the whole idea, and Father Mark agreed, that she was turning. She was running away, and they tracked her down, and she turned with the gospel, with her faith, and that was her faith. Okay? So when my daughter was telling me this, I sent her this poem. I started writing poetry again. I don't write a lot of poetry now. But I wrote this poetry, and I sent it to my daughter because she was, you know, a little bit anxious about getting old. So this poem is called In Any Given Moment. And I want to stand next to her because it's because of her I got starting to write poetry again, and because of how she turned and with her faith faced her fate. So this poem, if I can read it, I have my double glasses on. In any given moment, when wind is in your hair, when you stumble and fall and wake, not knowing where, do you not turn to face the wind rather than turn away, or get up or not get up from the ground, prostrate where you lay? Do you remember how you felt when she slammed the door, and how you now are standing there knocking as before? What you determine you will do is what will be your lot. And if you've yet to take that step, most likely you will not. As you speak, you hear yourself clear, direct, and smart. Or do you hear yourself equivocating and tying it in knots? I got a little on my page here. This is because of this poem, okay? When the past is telling you about your past mistakes and showing us what now to do, and in the next breath take, then the past is useful and full of wisdom that will last. But the past and what they call the present is but the future passing by. That is, of course, if you think you can in the present last. So in this instantation is the holy ground of both the two dimensions. One is sure to be the one left, or the other, living future found. For the future is that constant state of which we are becoming. That's, okay, definitely changed my life. She turned, okay, so I'm just going to wrap up by saying, after the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, we were scared. I mean, we saw all the coffins in New York and all, and heard of it. We knew about the 1918 influenza. We knew about the Black Plague. And I have for a long time been thinking about climate change. What they euphemistically call global warming, which is really global heating, which will become global cooking. And people aren't paying attention to it. We're all wrapped up, you know, in the news. We should be facing that like she faced what she had to face, okay? Evil in a way. Our world, God's creation, we're supposed to be, you know, taking care of it. And we're really destroying it for future generations. We're not going to be able to live in Puerto Rico too much longer. The last 2 summers were very, very hot. One day in San Juan, it was 115. Of course, they take it, you know, at sea level. We're 1,000 feet above sea level, so we have natural air conditioning. But still up there, it was like 105 degrees. And this year it was worse. So, you know, you can't, it's terrible. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is we need, like St. Vincent, to face, if the church is not Christocentric, if it wants to be Christocentric, it has to face the issues and the crisis of our time. And there are, you know, crisis, God's creation. You know, the first book of God is nature, going all the way back to people who could, you know, have consciousness. You know, they worship nature. But the Holy Spirit is in nature. Everything has the Holy Spirit. Christ came back at Pentecost to give us especially the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Spirit is in his creation. Everywhere you look is the Holy Spirit, the way I look at it. And when I carved her, when I got ready to carve her, I prayed to the Holy Spirit because I know that Christ, you know, gave us the Holy Spirit. And I don't know how it happened. I really don't know. Some people can sing, some people can, you know, do math, can do this, can do that. This is kind of what I could do. And I don't really know. It's a mystery to me. But it's a blessing. It's a great blessing. And at the age of 14, I realized that because of St. Joseph's Church, because of these stained glass windows, it is magnificently divine. I came to Christ through beauty, and beauty is all through creation. And what we're doing is not really beautiful. And we need to wake up, and we need to face the future in the presence, and be more like St. Dimphna. God bless you, and thank you.
Wow.
There are scenes, but I probably can't find. Well, I did paint it. I mean, I did.
I love what you said about you came to Christ through beauty.
Yes.
And just last night I was listening to a lecture. You know, people talk about the transcendentals, the beauty, the good, the true.
Yes.
But people argue that we really, in our century, need to start with beauty.
Yes.
Because it's the only thing that people can relate to. If you say true, we say, yeah, well, I am my own truth, you are your truth.
Absolutely.
I'm going to decide what's good. But people lose themselves when they experience beauty.
Exactly.
So I thought what you said.
No, that's good. I really appreciate that. And it's unfortunate, I mean, it's terrible that the young are growing up in this technology so much that everything is moving to, I can't look at the TV. Even the news, it flashes this, that. This is really scrambling our eggs.
Yeah.
We really can't do that. I mean, one good thing, one of the things beautiful about Puerto Rico is that we live way up on the mountain, and we see the sunrise over Jerusalem, and we see the moon at night come up there, and you can smell the ocean, and it's in nature, all kinds of birds and everything. I mean, if we could get back to nature and understand that that is the Holy Spirit alive for us. What are we doing to it? You know, overdevelopment, polluting everything. So I do think that we have to wake up, you know, and hopefully this is the season of anxiety because of what's going on. But if we can get through it, and we will, you know, it may be not too good, but we will get through it. But then maybe we can pay attention for future generations at least, if not just God's creation, because everyone doesn't, you know, believe the same thing. But we do love our children, grandchildren. What was given to us, we have to pass on. We're a link in a divine chain, and we have to do our part. You know.
That's great.
What's your name?
Bob
Bob what?
Proctor.
Bob Proctor, I've heard that name.
He's a professor.
He's a what?
Yeah, he's a professor, retired.
No, I'm retired.
Bob Proctor, I've heard that name. Call me and we'll be in touch.
And Martha's an artist.
And I'm an artist.
You're
and
an
I lived in
Yeah.
Puerto Rico in the 1960s.
You
with
did?
my family. I loved it, yeah.
Oh, wow.
We spend a lot of time
Are you his
in
wife?
Italy now. I'm his wife,
Really?
yeah.
What a blessing. You guys.
Yeah, we
poor-
spend
Yeah.
a lot of time in Italy, and
Patty, get his,
Wait, may we take one of
do
these?
you come to Mass all the time, or what?
yes, well, when we're here,
Good,
The
okay.
diocese has a mass every year now
Thank you.
for people with mental health issues.
Right.
And it's held here
is it okay to
because we have
Oh, sure, absolutely.